So, what is the limit of science? In this modern world, science seems to be the answer to understanding the world and reality. But science is limited, and therefore it cannot really explain everything in reality. Science is done under the terms of the scientific method, and every endeavor which is done under some method has its restrictions. Every method of trying to understand reality is limited through the method itself. For example, with science, there has to be the possibility. The scientific method is based on observing, creating hypotheses and trying to falsify them, and if you make an experiment, you have to document that in such a way that other people could replicate it, so that it's as objective as possible. But this way of trying to understand reality has, although it has a lot of upside to it, science has given us a lot of good things and has figured out a lot. But, for example, subjective experience, which cannot be verified, which cannot be tested, which cannot be recreated somewhere else, is just taken out of the equation and not seen as important. It's just not part of science. So, is that good, or is this a problem? It's not really a problem, but it becomes a problem if you think that science can explain everything. And we have, in our world today, a very strong belief that science is not only the best way to explain, but it is an absolute way to explain, which is not. And we just have to be aware of that. Science can also only just tell us how the world works, how it behaves, but not really on the most fundamental level, what it is made out of. What I mean by that? Science can, for example, observe things in reality, for example, split matter up into smaller and smaller particles. If you look at an atom, there are electrons, protons. For example, the electron has a negative charge, and science can explain this negative charge only in terms of other things. It can only say what is a negative charge. A negative charge is not a positive charge and not a neutral charge. But what is charge really in its most fundamental form? This is what science cannot explain. It can only explain phenomena, or if it tries to describe things, or then it has to describe them in terms of other things, so it cannot explain them absolutely. And we have believed that for example, if we categorize plants as something, like we say, oh, this is a tree, then somehow we think that just because we give it a name that we know what it really is, which is absurd. So the more absolute way of understanding and exploring reality has to do with a kind of philosophical approach, which also questions and examines science and its methods. So, philosophy is, maybe it's not absolute, but it's more, it's, of course it's not absolute, but it's closer to universal than science is.